Education. Education causes only an expansion of brain, whereas the most essential factor for the expansion of mind is culture, which puts the channels of our thought and actions in order. Mere reading of books without a close study of the heart's book is of no avail. But since I am not very learned, I may possibly be misunderstanding the real meaning of education. It was in the state of ignorance that I was born, and I am more so now because when I opened the book of my heart for the purpose of study, I found it only one word: ignorance.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the most common fallacy, if you observe ourselves, most of us have a feeling that we are very comfortable with ourselves. We have a feeling that we know quite a lot. And when that feeling comes, the door of yearning also will not be there. I mean, to know more about your heart. To know more about your heart means to know more about the nature of the mind of Babuji himself. So, वो exploration का motivation भी नहीं रहता. Because when you feel that you know everything, where is the necessity to learn? So you will not even bother to listen to Babuji's talks and all that, because you feel that you already know what you read it already, you know everything about it. Once that reality that actually we do not know anything, truly speaking, as Babuji himself says, then only, the door opens for divine knowledge to enter into your mind. So if, so this is very important, because this is a very commonest problem of the ego. Each person, pretty much everybody is dominated by ego. So they feel they know quite a lot about so many things, and especially spirituality. And when that idea comes, there'll be no further exploration or a yearning to meditate and then try to gain more intimate knowledge about the master, actually. So that is a problem. Truth is, we are actually ignorant. There's a famous story of the Socrates, then when he was being executed by asking him to take poison hemlock. There was a delay for 1 or 2 days because there was some ship was supposed to come and then he was to die the same day or something. So one of his close friends goes and meets him, Socrates, because he was a learned man. There were so many admirers of him in that society. So that fellow goes and tells Socrates that people in Athens are thinking that you're the most wise man, like that. Socrates says, yes. When I was very young, I thought I was very wise. And he says, when I became an adult, after some years have passed, I know that I am not so wise, and I do not know anything. I do not have much knowledge. He says, at the fag end of my life, when I'm going to die tomorrow, now I know that I don't know anything. You go and tell our friends in Athens that their idea that I'm a wise person is wrong. So tell them that that's not true. Actually, the truth is I don't know anything. That's the point. Then he goes and tells his friends. Socrates told that he's not wise at all. He's asked you to revise your opinion about him. Then their friends, they tell him, foolish fellow, that is the reason why he's the wisest man.
Sir. Babuji has said somewhere, sir, jana to ye jana ki jana kuch bhi nahi. Sir, you're on mute, I think.
You can observe that is why people don't read Babuji's books. Second, I have known several Abhyasis who probably would have read only once or twice his original works, because they have a feeling that they know everything. Once that feeling comes, the path actually gets closed, because the knowledge of God comes when only there is a vacuum inside you. Vacuum in the sense when you feel that you have to regulate your mind, you have to follow you have to be absorbed in the master's thoughts. That motivation will not be there.
Yeah.
Truth is ignorance, but our ego makes you feel that you know quite a lot about, because you have done meditation for so many hours, and then you felt as a result of meditation, you have felt calm. You feel that you have got all the knowledge in this world. That's the end of the story. Anyway, let's go ahead.
Yeah.
So we have to contemplate on when Babuji himself says ignorance, then you can imagine what is our state, our knowledge about spirituality and what not.
Correct.
So sochna padega, unless you give weight to his thoughts, we'll remain smug, and then we'll become complacent, and then we feel happy with our state of existence. Only when we have this feeling that we have to learn more, Like if you read Babuji's my pain story in this, he says, I'm still learning, he says. Even now, I'm still learning. My master is teaching, I'm still learning, he says. That's why it's called Anant Ki Or. Okay, we'll go ahead.
Yeah. Present education fallacies. Our present education, being dyed in the gaudy colors of Western thought, tends towards the increasing of necessities of life to an abnormal limit. All through life, people go on striving for their procurement with the full force of their thought and effort. That becomes their main pursuit of life. Reverses and failures create unhappy effects upon them and spoil their mood. The real cause of anger is usually one's own refractory temperament. A stubborn nature cultivated by the effect enshrouds one's sense of judgment. The distinction between right and wrong having thus been lost, he remains rigidly fixed upon his views and allows no accommodation to others' views. This is undoubtedly a serious block in the way of spirituality. One on the path of spirituality should necessarily be as light in mind and spirit as possible. He should be free from even the weight of the feeling of what he is after. This is in fact the real secret of a strong will, which I disclose to you today.
ये थोड़ा सोचने वाली बात है. It's a tip he is giving you about how you can utilize the power of your mind. Another place he talks, like in that Gulbarga message, he says, you make a gift of your heart to the master, and then you have to do then straight from that day itself, Vairagya will come. You don't have to do anything. There he gives another idea. He says, when you give your heart to the master, that thought should be a very light thought. I mean, it's not a forceful thought filled with a lot of emotion and all that. They don't have power. So in a very peaceful manner, in a gentle way, when your mind is very calm, almost it should not come into your cognitive state also. It should be an idea that you have given your heart to the master or something like that. In the deepest core of your consciousness, it should not even come up to your conscious level. It should be so light. He says that is a powerful will, and that will start growing, and then it will start later on it starts coming into the conscious mind, and then the transformation is permanent, he says. That he talks in that article called the Gulbarga message, when he says you have to gift your heart to the master. So here also he's quoting the same thing. He says he should be free from even the weight of the feeling of what he's after. This is in fact the real secret of a strong will. Not laden with emotion, or it'll not work. People like you see, when they want to give up smoking and all that, no, I'll from now onwards I'll start. After a few hours they'll start. So the decisions made on forceful emotions and all will not work. So in a calm mind, in a very relaxed state of mind, when everything is calm, and that you make a subtle suggestion, that is a powerful will actually. So he's giving you a clue of how to use our mind properly for our advantage here. Yeah, go ahead, Vivek.
Yeah. So here, sir, he should be free from even the weight of the feeling of what he's after is referring to what he would.
The thought, nature of the thought you give. Like, for example, you get a clue of in trainer's manual, we have suggestions. They are called suggestions, can be subtle, subtler, and the subtlest suggestion. Subtlest suggestion is extremely subtle. It will work immediately. It's very, very, very powerful. Subtle suggestions all of us can give. The more subtle suggestion, the more power it has got. Like, for example, he gives the example, he says when he went to Lalaji Maharaj, he used to find people coming and telling their woes about their mental problems. Like, suppose a person is suffering from lust, or suppose a person is suffering from anger, disproportionate anger or jealousy or whatever. So they would narrate their problems to him, and he listens to the problems, and he just says, "Acha," that's all. And then those people were permanently cured from those maladies. So Babuji studies that, and he says, when he recognizes and he says "Acha," in that "Acha" itself there is a suggestion to remove those impurities. And he says that is the transmission. Kargi, he learns from observing his guru actually. So Lalaji never even said, no, this person should be free from envy or jealousy or anger or lust, whatever. Nothing like that. He just receives, and then casually, to carry on the conversation, he would have said "Acha," and in that there is a suggestion that he should be free from all this. So that is what he means. He is giving you a clue about what a subtle suggestion works like that. That means there will be not even a feeling of the thought which you are suggesting.
Yeah.
So it's a higher spiritual point he's trying to tell you, but we can all benefit by understanding it. Yeah.
Okay, I'll read it.
Yeah.
In such a case, whatever thought gets settled in shall have its action. Permanency in this state is an attainment of a high order. Hell, heaven, and Brahma Lok. Everyone praises men of wisdom, and I too do so. At some place, I have also humorously remarked that even God does not help the weak persons, and he alone is weak who lacks self-confidence. Now, I say that God has reserved a place for those who are foolish, and that is heaven. The hell is heaven for the sinners and for the ignorant. For the wise, there is heavenly heaven, and for the innocent, Brahma Lok. I think the above divisions are correct. If I explain it, it will require a number of pages. Therefore, I leave the explanation to you people. Layavastha in Brahman. The experience of the ultimate begins when every other experience dies out. Those who have acquired Layavastha in Brahman, as much as is possible for the human being, remain in it, sometimes with the full depth and sometimes a little shallow. A man fully absorbed in Brahman all the time can do any work but will look like a statue. So should I read it?
Go ahead. Yeah, godly mind.
A godly mind, it is impossible to reach reality through the medium of reason. Reality is, after all, an intuitional thing, Vajdani. This is quite true, and the Sufis, that is Muslim mystics, mostly considered the Vajdani, that is intuitional condition, to be the real condition. But our thinkers have gone still further than this. Vajdan is nevertheless connected with the matter, and the I-ness is hidden in it. The condition which lies beyond this can indeed be called the real condition. Reason cannot reach there. When individuality goes away from the individual mind, the mind alone remains, which is one only, and it can then be called the godly mind. Just that, just that alone brings to view the real condition of the self. The reach of reason is to the extent to which you view the other thing with import. Anything on the previous one?
The intuition, maybe he says intuition is also, that's why in yoga we talk about chitta vritti nirodha. That means all thoughts and feelings should become quietened down. So we talk about silence as an important way which will lead you to the reality. So yogis give more importance to silence where there are no thoughts and feelings at all. So that and as the silence becomes much deeper and much rarefied, then the mind is dominated by, then the mind becomes a divine mind. That divine mind will lead you to know about divinity. Whereas even you can get intuitional insight even with a lot of ego also. If you are in a very prayerful mood, or you go and meet a great master, you may have a lot of impurities inside you, but because of his grace, you will get intuitional wisdom actually. But still ego will be lurking. So Babuji feels that is there's a much subtler condition beyond intuition also.
Yeah.
So many people who have visited Babuji, they felt enlightened actually. That enlightenment was possible even in spite of ego. Ego is actually the main barrier between you and God. So you can easily understand it actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Zero. It is possible that I cannot understand the meaning of zero in as good a manner as others do, because the zero cannot know the condition of another zero, nor can the dead know the condition of the corpse. In a way, you may call such a condition as that where all dualities whatsoever go away. and we become living dead, or we get dissolved in reality in such a way that every discrimination is lost, and the difference between the real and the imitation is not discerned.
He is, beautifully is telling state of realization and all that.
Yeah.
So actually, if you are meditating, you should get those states actually. If you're correctly meditating, you will have that kind of a condition.
Real spirituality lies in actually becoming colorless, odorless, and tasteless, because God has none of these. In our system, it is endeavored to take one up to reality. If any color remains, there can be no purity at all. You know all these things.
Like Vivek, I'll just read a little passage from autobiography, how
Yes,
he tries to describe this condition. This was in March 1929. He writes a letter to the master. I'm just reading it. We'll get a glimpse how, how our minds also will change if you meditate correctly, actually.
yes.
He says, revered guide of both the worlds, may you live long. I have to submit that I fail to find topics daily to record in the diary. The reason is that there is much preoccupation in court work, which hinders the path. He says he was busy with his office work, that's why he wrote the diary. But God's will is to be obeyed. My general condition, as I have been writing to you from time to time, is the same. But one thing has been added. Whenever I indulge in any worldly or spiritual assignment, I feel I do not know whether the work is being done by me or by some secret being. Only a machine seems to be in action. Even if I try to assure myself that it is I who am working, the doer is not perceived. In other words, it seems as if various faculties bestowed by God for different purposes are working of their own accord. For instance, thought does contemplative work. The hand does the work of writing, etc., etc. But I am unable to know who is working, because neither do I seem to be working, nor does any other being appear to work. If I take myself to be a machine, it will perhaps explain my condition. My condition is like that of the pan of a balance. When some weight is kept on one pan, it becomes heavier. And when the weight is removed, both pans become balanced. To me, this analogy illustrates my total condition. I dreamt that a fellow brother is telling me that revered master has sent a letter which contains two instructions for me. The first is that I am to consider the home as a jungle. The other slipped from my memory and I failed to comprehend its significance. Later, I saw a saint. He transmitted to me at Aligarh railway station. Then I dreamt that I was crossing a river which had a dry passage in the middle, and the saint was standing on the other bank, which was quite high. When I reached him, he grasped my hands and pulled me up. Thereafter, revered master transmitted to me. Next day, I saw revered master in a dream. I saw that I was sitting on the floor at a distance of about 4 yards from him. The emotion of love was in full sway and intense to such an extent that I was totally unconscious, and some force in the head was pulling me upward. Seeing this, my master beckoned to me to sit closer to him, and then I woke up. Since a few days, my condition has become such that whenever I think of doing something, lethargy does not permit me to do it. Every work is being procrastinated. If new clothes are to be stitched, the time never comes for it. In case someone comes across, I ask him to do the work, otherwise not. Mostly I am not conscious of any other personal requirement excepting food. Very often I forget my meals. If my coat is short of a button, the missing button is not replaced. There is procrastination and indifference in every work, particularly my personal work. So this is how he's writing. It's a clue in the sense, even if we meditate and then when your mind, he uses the word called surat, and it starts imbibing divine, then the doership should go actually. If it is going, then you must know that we are progressing actually. That is the final goal, because without, unless the doership goes, unless the ego goes, you can never have a glimpse of God at all.
Yes.
We'll go ahead. Yes, perception.
Yeah. Perception. There's a Persian proverb, see Layla with the eyes of Majnu. That is, as Layla was an ugly girl, it required the eyes of a Majnu only to see her. In the same way, if we have to see God, the same mad looks are required.
Yeah, this is interesting because I read a story somewhere. Majnu was, I think, the way I could remember was, I think he was the brother of a king or something. And then the king actually was unhappy that this fellow was behaving in an abnormal way, is not conscious of his duties and all. So he invites him to his court, and he lines up several beautiful women, and he says, you look at these women and then get married to anyone you like. And then he says, I don't like any of them. And he says, but I believe the king asks him, why do you like a woman like Majnu who is ugly to look at? I believe she was ugly to look at actually. Then what is the reason why you have chosen this woman who is not good to look at also? He says, unless you have my eyes, you will not be able to appreciate the beauty I see. That's the thing he tells to that king. And so in the same way, the saint actually, his way of looking at God will be different from the looks which ordinary people have about other things. And the perception of you about God will be totally different when compared with ordinary people actually. That's it, totally. Each of us have a unique perception about any object. Some people may like a rose, some people may like a jasmine. So it is just a perception. You like something, that is an individual perception. So the perception you have about your guru will be unique in his own way. So the perception which Babuji had for Lalaji, or that's a unique way. So unless we, so if you're meditating correctly with an idea to realize your true nature, your perceptions change. Your perception about money, your perception about your wife, children, your perception about your property, perception about your political opinions, all those things continuously change actually, and it will be totally different. It will be changing very rapidly. What perception you have today about the world, about your wife and children, or about your job, or about your meaning to the money and all that, will be changing very, very rapidly if you're meditating correctly actually. So that will be reflected in the diary actually. Perception about health also will change. What you think very painful condition, the perception will change. It will be like the fifth commandment. You say this is for my good, and then you will feel thankful for suffering also. whole perception changes, which for an ordinary person will look very crazy. It says, commonly people who meditate, and when you meditate, when your mind is absorbed in the presence of divine God, you feel a lot of contentment, and you feel you're one with your real condition. So there's a contentment and joy and bliss in meditation. So that's why yogis earlier, they used to go into isolation and stay in some caves or in isolated places, in some riverfront and all that, not indulging in what city life or whatever it is. So people in city life judge those people. These people are missing everything. They don't have any desires. They are punishing themselves from, suppressing their desires and all that. That is not the fact, actually. The joy and contentment which they feel in meditation is such a superior order, which ordinary people cannot perceive that kind of a state of mind. That kind of state of mind is possible. Ordinary people cannot know it. So they pity people who are doing meditation, and meditation people pity people who are unnecessarily suffering due to those three causes of, Adi Daivika, Adhyatmika, Adi Bhautika. Nobody can escape from this suffering, whereas this fellow is free from that suffering. Yeah. So when you're meditating, you have to watch how your perceptions are changing. And he says you should have, now he's asking us to have similar perception like he had for his guru. We should also develop similar perception. Yeah. If it is not there, you can imitate it, he says. Correct. And you keep on imitating it, at some point it will become real, because thought has got a feeling aspect alongside coming here. If you repeatedly think, that feeling becomes also starts becoming real after some time. Correct. Okay, we'll go ahead.
Yeah. Concepts of God. The most commonly accepted conception of God is eternal power. But the philosophic view goes much beyond and includes the idea of Nirguna Brahma, or indeterminate absolute, which is above all multiplicity and distinctions. It is the ultimate cause and substratum of existence, the supra-active center of the entire manifestation, or the absolute base. It is beyond quality, activity, or consciousness. It is also called as Parabrahman. Next comes the idea of God as supreme existence. We see the universe with all its diversities and differentiations, and we are led to believe in it as creator and controller. We call him as Ishwar or Saguna Brahma. That is determinate absolute. Really, God is neither Nirakar nor Sakar, but beyond both.
So this yoga, there's a, though Sankhya is a philosophy which is also known to take you to realization of your true nature. Yoga depends upon the Sankhyan metaphysics, but yoga talks about Ishwar actually. Ishwar is the determinate God. He is the true guru. So all people who have received training from Babuji regard him as Ishwar himself. He is the eternal teacher, and he is present. He is the indwelling God actually. And he is always accessible, especially if you follow his suggestion, like what he says in the second commandment. If you repeatedly practice so that you get into the spirit of prayer, the way Babuji describes, you can have access to that Ishwar always actually. So beyond that, of course, Parabrahman or whatever it is. But then for your progress, you have a guru who is always ready to help you. Only thing is you should have sufficient train yourself in prayer in such a way that your voice is heard heard there actually. So that is the thing which you take the means of devotion to regulate our mind actually. Devotion is a very powerful method to bring about regulation of mind very rapidly actually. So we'll stop here then.